So I'm hoping that means I've gone live. YouTube is nowhere near as easy to use as, well, other streaming services. So I believe I should be live now. And we'll have a look. I think there's some people chatting. I'm looking at some analysis, and this was all completely unexpected, and I've done it on the main channel, which is a big risk because I know a lot of people have probably just got a ping to say something's going on. And indeed something is going on, but firstly I just need to share some links with the Discord server and other places. I also need to stop this from sort of deliberately streaming everywhere. Right. There we go. Well, I'm hoping that people are actually watching the stream. Right, so let me just find how I get a link to this current stream, because I can't actually see it. I'm just going to pause me from watching myself, because I find that quite distracting. And I will find... As you can see, I'm completely amateur at this, but the stream's going to be quite interesting, I think, and I'll introduce it properly. And of course, this will be going up as a VOD later on anyway. But what I want, YouTube, somewhere, please just give me a link to the stream. I just copy that, copy video URL. Hopefully that'll work. So I'll just post that in the announcements and see what happens. I'll also just post that on Twitter as well. So the stream, right? I think I'm up to speed now. Let me get a screen that I like the look of. So hello everybody. Yes, the stream has started, and the idea of this stream is I want to later on, maybe this month, later this year, do some videos on hardware. I'm actually a hardware guy. And yes, you can hopefully see I've got a bench here full of interesting bits and pieces. And one of the things I wanted to do was assemble a robot arm, ultimately with the aim of allowing Twitch chat and other chat services to control the robot arm live. It's silly, but I think there's some nice educational content we can do about how we go about achieving that. Hopefully my audio levels are all okay. If they're not, please let me know. It's all been a bit of a last-minute setup. I'm just putting the chat somewhere where I can see it. Because, basically, was the voxel engine only an April Fool's? Well, you'll have to find out next April, won't you? So the plan of this stream is, it really is just going to be me slowly building the cheapest, nastiest robot arm I could find. Incredibly cheap, and I'm going to be slowly building it up because I want to have this thing which then we can write some firmware for, and you'll see I've got some bits of... I'm looking at the screen, by the way, so I can see I'm pointing in the right place. And I wanted to record the footage of me building this arm, because in the final videos, the proper videos that I'm going to be making, I want to play that footage at high speed, so it all makes a nice video package. But I thought this would be, in fact, you know what, I should press record on the video camera, shouldn't I? That might actually be quite useful. That'd be inappropriate not to do. So let me just have a quick look at the chat, so you can see we've got quite a lot of viewers already. Chat won't let this arm last. And yes, the plan will be, whilst I'm building it, because it's not going to be coding today so much, it's going to be actually building the thing. I actually show you, we did a preparation live stream on Twitch on Friday night, so if I pair it up, and the idea was just to have some simple control over a small servo motor. I'll put that somewhere where you can see it. It's looking a little bit underexposed up there, but hey. And I just wanted to see if all of the technology works, because as you can tell, this isn't my usual setup. Yes, pressing record is always usual. It's not an Arduino, and over time I will slowly announce what these things are. Just turn that back off. So the robot arm that I got, it's all completely unprepared, was this, and this is how it came. So this was the cheapest robot arm you can find on Amazon. It was 32 English pounds, which is, it's not insignificant, but it's actually, for a robot arm, it's nothing at all. And for another 20 pounds, it came with all the servos. And you can see I've not even opened it. But one of the servos fell out of the package, and so I thought, well, I'll have a go at trying to hook that up to my little device here. So we'll have some fun building that. But because it's just me building a robot arm, I thought, why not have a little bit of a Q&A session? I know some people have questions that they've been asking me for in the past. So I'm just having a quick look at all of the statistics that are popping up, because now people are turning up. I don't know, hopefully the video stream should be okay. It doesn't look like I'm dropping any frames, but YouTube's just popping up an error at me saying I've got some sort of setting incorrectly. But I'm guessing it's all okay. So let's have a look. Who have we got in the chat? Jacob, hey. By the way, Jacob was the winner of the OLC code jam that we had at the end of last year, so it's good that he's popped along. And I've got some tea, and for those interested, it's Darjeeling today. Right, so the plan is to have a look at this robot arm, but let me explain what is going on here, because this will form part of a series, probably not a series, probably just a couple of videos. This is an Mbed LPC 1768 device, and it's connected to a horribly cheap servo. We'll look at detail, I think, when I actually get around to making the video of what this device is and what its capabilities are. But it's not an Arduino. It's a little bit more sophisticated than an Arduino, I think. And I use them both as a hobby and professionally. And Marty's during the stream put Ross on it straight away. Marty's a good friend of mine. And I'm pleased that he's... In fact, you know what, Marty? Because I might need them, I'm going to somehow establish you as a moderator. There we go. Just in case. Because I know that I don't usually live stream on the main channel. I usually live stream on Twitch, and the numbers are a lot smaller. In fact, we're already up to 100 viewers here, according to my stats. So I think what we'll do is we'll start by opening the arm. So let me move this out the way. The idea is, it's not very interesting, I guess, just watching me build an arm, so I think at the same time I'll answer some questions. Now, if I miss the questions, I do apologise. Do just shout them out so I can see them. Obviously, if some of the questions are inappropriate, I'm not going to answer them. But I'll do my best. I have tools as well. I bought myself a new toolbox. It's this dangling off my toolbox. See something flat. Where's it gone? There we go. But see, even the toolbox was super cheap. So I should thank, actually, all of my Patreons or Patreons, because they have, in effect, funded the arm, and they have funded my little toolbox here. So I'm going to probably need that, and I'm probably going to need that. I'll probably need some other bits later on. Right, so build two arms, one controlled by Twitch, one controlled by YouTube. Yeah, that's a good idea. If one arm works, the arm is cheap enough that I really don't know if it's going to work or not. So I try not to cut through the cables. Occasionally, obviously I can't see the screen and not cut my fingers off at the same time. If any of the mods, there are a few mods already. I think there might be some on the Discord too. Just make sure that they're aware of what's going on. Hey, streaming on YouTube. And I'll paste the link as well. Right, robot arm. So, what have we got? It's a bit of an unboxing. It does look like there's some instructions, which was good. I was a bit worried because I was just thinking maybe it's just a horrible bag of bits. Right, so let's just have a quick... I'll have to glance at the chats periodically. Where did you get the arm, and what are you going to program it? I got the arm from Amazon. I will probably put some links. This is all to make a video later on, because I don't want to... I'll run the construction of the arm at high speed during that video. So I got the arm from Amazon, and it was very, very cheap. It's from a company called DIY More, which I think is some Chinese importer. So what have we got? I've got some servos. That's good. Oh, there is some installation instructions, so that's encouraging that I might actually get this done. I just hope I've got the right tools, because I don't have a very small set of spanners, so we'll have to build things incorrectly with pliers, I think. Morning, Kieran. In fact, Kieran, you know what? I'll... Hopefully you're Kieran from the Discord. Let me know that you're Kieran from the Discord somehow. Have we had any sort of questions for me yet. So I think in some way for me to notice that there are some questions going up, I'll need ping me in them or something, put my name in them so in case I can see them a bit more. So what else have we got in here? So they've got an instruction manual. And there's quite a lot of components. It says here 1 aluminium clamp claw, servo brackets, waist brackets, more servo brackets, ball radial bearings, multifunctional servo brackets, 6 servos, aluminium servo horns. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And I guess we'll just start at the beginning, which is assembling most of the aluminium structure. The tea mug is just asking to be knocked over. It's a very big mug, so I think it's got a low centre of gravity. So yes, hello everybody. Obviously, the nature of this, because I've made no announcement that this is going to happen, we're going to have people coming in and leaving at different times, so there might be some repetition in the things that I'm saying. I'm also not put any background music on because I don't want YouTube to shut me down. I've got a big bag of screws here. Make sure things are on the camera so you can see what's going on. I don't think I need the servos just yet, so I'll just move those out of the way. And this is, I hesitate to call it aluminium. It's probably some horribly cheap alloy, but let's call it aluminium for the sake of the stream. So I'm just yanking all the bits out here. Maybe they were packaged in a particular order that's important, I don't know. And what else have we got? At least there's no sort of just loose components. There's a bundle of stuff there, that's important. And there's a bundle of stuff there. Do I want to build a snowman? I'm not going to start singing. I think there was a question earlier on, but I think I might have missed it already. Let me just have a quick scan over what people have typed already. Because obviously I'm not typically very good at doing things live. No, I can't find it anyway. Is that device you're using programmable? Yes, it is a programmable device. You program it in C or C++, which is really nice for this channel. In fact, you can even download sort of add-ons for Visual Studio that allow you to program it, although I won't be doing that in the video. So, it says, instruction 1. Actually, it doesn't. It just has a picture for 1. It says, please follow steps below to install. So the website I've got this from is diymore.cc, and I should point out they haven't sponsored this in any way at all. This is entirely Patreon funded, so thank you very much. Right, I can barely see the images. Everything's so small. So it says, 3-1, we take 2 brackets, 6 nuts and bolts, and positive and negative. Let me put that up there so you can see what's going on. And maybe will it focus? Will it focus? I don't know. Will it focus? Maybe it needs more light. How many degrees of freedom does it have? It has 6 degrees of freedom. I want to make a slider that I can control with the Arduino. Any ideas about what motors to use? Well, I'm using horribly cheap servos. I do know a thing or two about motors. In fact, it's my day job. And I wouldn't use these nasty servos for that. So I've got 3 of these parts. Why have I got 3 of these parts? Let me just look at the picture. So we've got 2 along the bottom there, and 1 along the top. Do you know what I'm going to try and do? I'm going to try and pop up this image on the screen. Let me just see if I can find where it is. So I'm just typing away at the moment. There we go. I just want to make sure I'm not throwing loads of personal information all over the screen, which I might be a little bit. Let's pull that up. Right, so if I press my magic button here, that's what the arm should look like when it's finished. So it's got a gripper, claw, and a whole bunch of different axes. Marty's thrown some links into the embed. Are you going to do AI or neural network tutorials? If not, what projects are coming up? Well, this is going to disappoint a lot of people. Those that chat to me frequently on the Discord server will know that actually my background is in some way AI related. In fact, that's what I used to study at university before I defected to industry. And we can talk about sort of how I got to streaming to you guys today, perhaps later on in the video. But let me start actually building something. So I need the right screws. Let's go. Right. So all I've got is a big bag of screws. I don't think they're in any way identifiable, but we'll see what's in this bag. We've got more little bags of screws. I've got some ball bearings here as well. That's quite nice. You know what? For £30, I'm quite impressed. So, did they look like the screws for holding the base together, or... So it says, prepare the complete set of mechanical supports and hardware. Prepare the installation tool, Phillips screwdriver or electric screwdriver. I think there's been a bit of translation going on in here. Mounting the manipulator base. Some holes are only installed with some fixing screws. It's best to install all the holes in the actual installation. M3x8 screws are used for the installation between the bracket and the bracket. The M3x6 screws are used for the installation and fixing of the metal steering wheel and the bracket. Oh, this is going to be a load of fun. So I want to identify which ones are my M3x8s. So I would have thought these chunkier ones would have been used in the base, but apparently not. I don't need any Allen keys for this, so that's good. So they look like M3x8. In fact, we can check that. Are they 8mm long? They are 8mm long. So they're M3x8. So I think they're used for fastening the frame together. So a quick look at the chats. Hello, hello, hello. Balls, there we go. Good luck at installing the holes. Here we go. Doesn't take long, does it? Let me pull up the thing so I can see what's going on. Right, so I want to take two of these by the looks of it and fasten them together like that. Now that's going to be really awkward because I don't have a little spanner set. To make sure that what I'm building is actually on the screen. So if I build things a little bit more central like that, you can see what's going on, can't you? I'll put the instructions here so I can see them. So I don't think there's anything about these which is particularly asymmetric, so I think I can just go ahead and start fastening them together. And I'll do it loosely by just finger tightening first. And because I don't have a small spanner, I think we'll have to play with some pliers to do this, which is a horrible hack. Oh, hang on, I've lost my YouTube chat. Where's my YouTube chat gone? There we go. So, as you can tell, this is going to be a bit of a slow burning video. The idea of it, I thought, well, you know, I've been rather humbled by the growth of the channel. I wasn't expecting it to get anywhere near as big as it's got already. And one of the things I've not done is sort of interact with the YouTube audience anywhere near as much as I interact with the Discord and Twitch audience. And I do stream maybe weekly on Twitch. But I don't tend to do it on the main channel, mainly because the numbers get a little bit scary, as we can see. This robot is going to be a prerequisite for the voxel engine. Well, I'm glad that you all look super excited for the voxel engine. I have to go and make one now. As you know, I'm not the biggest fan of Minecraft in the world. empty a few more of these out. So I think that all of the mechanical structures go together with these smaller nuts and bolts. The trouble is, right now I'm suffering from fat finger-itis, which is making this a lot more difficult than perhaps it should be, but we'll see. Thanks for the reply on email advice uni project. I was able to finish it up within a few. Hey, no problem at all. You know, my whole One Lone Coder initiative is about helping those that may be a little bit lost. The thing is, it got a lot bigger than I expected it to, so I might not always be able to respond to every message and every comment and everything that comes in these days. However, I will point you all towards the Discord community. That's quite an important thing. Ah, good. Just a sec. One of my sort of very senior mods has just turned up, so let me just allow you to mod. There we go. So, at what age did you get into programming? There's a good question. Right. Well, I don't want to reveal my actual age on screen, but I'm sort of somewhere between 35 and 40. Yeah, the stream will be available later. Now, I started programming when I was 9 years old. That would be certainly over 20 years ago now. And I started programming on a BBC Micro Model B. It had a luxurious 16 kilobytes of RAM. And I loved it. That's all I did. I really, really loved it. I started just with some simple basic programs, and a couple of years later I started to dip into the assembly language. I didn't fully understand this. Oh, everybody's sort of joining on Twitch. For whatever reason, my alerts tell me everything that's going on. So they tell me about Twitch follows, and they tell me about YouTube subscriptions as well. So they might be pinging around a bit. Let's find a screwdriver bit that's sensible here. That one looks reasonable. We'll go with that. Yes. So I'll start trying to tighten some of these up. So yeah, it was a long time ago. It started off with a BBC Micro Model B. And I didn't actually get a PC for quite some time. I stuck with that for a while. And it was... I would have been about 16 years old before I even started to get a PC, and even then it was a second-hand 286 Intel PC, which was, you know, for me was a massive step up. It ran Windows 3.1, but this was in an era where Windows 95 was sort of also just becoming available. Right. Well, that looks dreadful already. There's nothing parallel or level about that construction. However, we'll run with it. Oh, have a mouthful of tea. So, if you haven't, it sounds like I'm really just plugging the Discord server here, but there's actually a lot of quite smart people on the Discord server who are prepared to help answer all sorts of interesting questions, particularly for beginners that are just starting up. We have a no stupid question rule, so it's sort of a bit of an anti-Stack Overflow. Right, I've assembled the base, so it now says, right, to one side of that, install bottom servo bracket, first install the bearing. The cup bearing size is 3 × 8 × 4. At each joint of the steering gear, a movable bearing must be provided on the side. Actually, sorry, I'm getting confused. Instruction 3 is up here, and it actually flows into the Instruction 4 panel. I will thank all of the Twitch followers later on. Right. Okay, so it looks like we've got to take the third piece, which I've already misplaced. There we go. So the third piece is going to sit upright like that. Already I can see some of the holes are probably not meant to be aligned, but we'll run with it. And the screws for this one
I think I'll do the screws in from the top, because I can fit my screwdriver in from above. I can't fit it in from below. Now, it may surprise some of you to learn that actually I do something like this, not dissimilar, for a living. I work for a company that produces fairly small scale but reasonably sophisticated robotic systems for heavy industry. Let's see if these line up. Well, so far those holes are lining up, so that's a good start. How much did the arm cost? So yes, the arm was £32 on Amazon, and I had to buy the servos separately, but it all came as one parcel, and the set of servos required was another £20. So I thought this will be a fun, sort of slow burning Sunday afternoon stream, low pressure really. People can dip in and out as they need. And hopefully we'll see, let's make sure that it's actually filming something that can be seen for the video later on. The whole point of this is to create some footage which I can speed up for a more a typical normal video involving how we program all of this to do interesting things. Do you think learning SFML is a good introduction to C++ graphics development? Yes, I do. I think a lot of people just want to delve straight in with things like OpenGL and DirectX, and they're great libraries, fun to use, but they do actually have a requirement that you understand a little bit about how C++ works first. So either they're quite object-oriented, which I believe SFML is. I don't use it myself, but you want something that's not going to fight back too much. And if you're going sort of native OpenGL or native DirectX, some of the syntax and the way that they force you to think about solving the problems may be a bit unintuitive at first. But I think SFML is a fairly easy to get to grips with library. As was, I found SDL too. SDL's got its quirks, but I think that's fairly easy to use. Although, of course, my recommendation would be Pixel Game Engine. Look at that horrible, shameless plug there. Right, so given the lack of spanners that I have, I'm going to hopefully think that they're all tight enough. So that looks like a base. Let's have a mouthful of tea and carry on. Link to Robot Arm would be good. Yes, okay. Let me find a link for you. I'll post it in the chat. I'll definitely put up links in the description later on when I get to edit all of the stream. I was saying at the start, streaming on YouTube is a horrible, horrible mess compared to other streaming services. So let me just find the link to the arm here. Going to open a guest window, just makes things a little bit easier without me sort of doxing myself. So you know, you forget these things now. Robot arm. There we go. Right, so I think the YouTube chat's probably going to stop you from seeing this, but we'll see. Oh, I can only post up to 200 characters. That is a little bit frustrating. That means I've got to go to a link shortening service in order to post this. Ugh, dear me. Okay, right, I think I've got a link now. So, that I've just posted in the chat is a link to this particular robot arm. What is my IQ? I don't know. I was tested in school a long time ago, but I don't put particular much merit in metrics like that. I don't necessarily think IQ is a relation of intelligence that is practical in the real world. Right, so I've got the base of the arm. Use M3x10 screws and M3 nuts for the bearing. M3x10 screws. That'll be the one in the little bag of bearings, so that's convenient. Make sure I don't get all of those mixed up. So, looking at these minuscule pictures, it says I've got to put the nut. Which part am I actually working with here? Probably a part that I've not got. I think it's one of those. Looks like one of those. So what it's saying is I should take one of the bearings, thread it through, but then it goes and says I should do something else. Accessories can be used to adjust the angle. So install the bottom servo bracket. First install the bearing, the cup size. So what it wants me to do is put a bearing on that face there. That's over there. Somewhere about there. And then that's going to go in down like that onto the arm there. So what is that? And that, okay, I understand. So that bearing is then used as a sort of a pivoting point for the opposite side of the servo. Okay. Right, let's find a, that looks like an M10, sorry, an M3x10. Yes, it is. So that means it's 10mm long.
Hey, what was your first phone? My first phone, oh dear, well it was before sort of the digital revolution. It was a Philips analog sort of thing, but I guess my first conventional mobile phone was a Nokia 5110. This hand is slow, so it cannot be used to cheating games. No, probably not. How long have you been interested in electronics and robotics? Well, probably quite a while. Certainly electronics was something a little bit more later in life, mainly out of a requirement for what I did as a postgraduate study. But I've always been interested in technology. I don't want to get all these bits mixed up. So what it says, I should put the bearing on. Now this bearing, I don't know if we can see on here, this bearing has a small flange on it. Of course the webcam's sort of focusing on nothing useful at all there. Maybe something like that. Has a small flange on it. So I'm going to put the flange against the surface like that, and then it says I should fasten that in with a nut. Okay, that does actually run fairly freely, even if I tighten up the screw. Yeah, the bearing itself has some free movement, so that's good. Right, so 4-2, position like that, and then 4-3 says I now need to fasten that to my base. And I think I'm fastening that, according to the diagram, middle hole slightly sticking up, somewhere upright like that, with 4 fastening, a whole 4 fastening screws, okay. Which side are they putting the nuts on? So they're doing it, yeah, okay, that makes sense. They're doing it like that. So that is going onto there. And I'll start with the one at the bottom. It's a bit more accessible if it's at the bottom. Is chat in window a new function? I've seen it on another channel as well. I don't know, can't answer that question, not entirely sure. What is your opinion of the Java programming language? Well,
actually, I quite like Java, and the clue is in the name, right? So even though this has been an exclusively C++ channel, really, that wasn't intentional. I just find C++ to be a lot faster at doing the game type things that we're doing rather than Java. However, the Javidx9 or Javidx9 is a play on my real name, David, with Java and DirectX9. You might be thinking, Java and DirectX9, how can that be a thing? Well, as part of a project I did for a bioinformatics group at a university, realised that people who do bioinformatics or any other kind of data-based sciences but aren't necessarily into programming, they struggled at writing software to visualize their experiments and their data sets. So I created a library which was aimed at simplifying these sort of more complicated graphical interfaces for non-computer specialists to be able to produce the data visualizations that they wanted. And it ended up rather an odd, curious combination of me creating a library in C++, which wrapped up DirectX9 to begin with, and I then created a JNI, a Java wrapper for that library, and it ended up getting quite a bit of use in the departments that I was involved with at university. And so from that spawned the handle Javidx9. There we go.
Alright, Kieran, see you later, man. Always thought you were called Javidx9.
I think there's people pronounce it in different ways. I don't mind. Right, I think this is where I'm going to need the first application of pliers because of my fat fingers. Can't actually get in, so let me find some pliers. There's my toolbox. Make sure that that's still going ahead. Yeah, I think that'll be okay. What do I want? I want something I can grab the nuts with. So I might need those, and I'll probably need those.
This stream is second with you. Yeah, what does that mean?
Sorry, I don't fully understand.
Not all voxel engine look like Minecraft.
I'm pleased that the voxel engine caused so much fuss. I would never recommend using a pair of pliers to hold nuts in place, but at the moment I've got to just make do with what I've got available.
Okay.
Well, what I'm pleased to see so far is it doesn't look like it's going to be an insignificant thing, this. I imagine it might be this tall by the time it's finished. I had no sort of concept of how big it was. I think I've got to do that several times over, but we'll see. Right, so I've installed that bracket. I've installed that one. Right. After installing the bottom servo bracket, start to install the steering gear. Before installing the steering gear, remember to adjust steering angle so that the joint can move within the effective range that you need. We use rocker arm accessories that come with steering angle gear to roughly estimate the steering angle. Manually hit the left and right dead angles and then select the intermediate angle to install. Without the rubber pad, the screw is not long enough and the screw is not used. Right, I have no idea what any of that meant, but I think what it's encouraging me to do is to shove a servo into this arm. So that's what I'll do. What is the arm going to be used for? Well, ultimately, I want to create probably just one video, might spill over into two videos, about firstly the UART protocol and so using your COM ports on your PC, but then the second part will be integrating it into Twitch chat, so people can type commands into Twitch and move the arm around, which it's ultimately pointless, but I think there's some interesting messages which we can deliver whilst we're doing this. Now, let's not lose these servo arm bits. Let's keep those a bit separate. So it says I've got to install a servo. I guess that slots in there like that. Cable sticking out, and I just want to fasten that in. And then once you've installed the servo, it needs more bits. I just want to I'm looking forward, I'm looking ahead a little bit just to see where this is going, because I think the idea is that sits on the bearing at the bottom with the servo inside. Yes, so that's going to sit on the bearing, and the servo itself is connected. Servo is connected to the top. And then we have the second joint, which looks something like that. Okay, let's run with that then. So getting that on and off is going to be quite a bit of fun. Turn that there, pull that off. So let's fasten the servo in place. Now, it doesn't give me any indication about how you fasten the servo in place, and it's given me some screws and things. But these they look like they're for some self-tapping holes. So I don't think they screw into there. I think these must go on with nuts and bolts. So hang on, is there another thing? So is this actually what I'm fastening the servo to with? No, that looks like that's for fastening that plate on. They're not the ones. These holes look a bit bigger, and these ones look a little bit more industrial, and I've not been told to use these just yet. Let's have a quick look. You'd like to program a robot, but you're not sure what interface would be least painful. Well, I am told, although I don't have much personal experience myself, that ROS is the way forward if you want to program robots, sort of at a it's an almost professional level, really. We do program robots at work, but I don't use ROS. I tend to just do everything myself. Right. So I think those are the screws for holding in the servo. So I'm going to fasten this servo in place. I've got no particular means of controlling the servo yet to set any positions on it, so I don't really know what angle or anything that's sat at. I guess this will be some fine tuning I'll need to do when we start to power it up. But let's fasten this in place. One there.
Could you make a video on voxels? How long will it take to build the robot? I really don't know. I'm hoping that probably not more than a couple of hours, and then I'll probably not today do any programming of it. Today's really just me capturing this footage and answering some of you guys' questions, really. If you've got any. Don't have to have any. See, I'm wondering if yeah, no, I've got it on the right side, that's good. It's a bit tight, that one. Can you do a video on how to read open source project? I need to involve Super Tux Kart project, but I've got problems into where to start. You mean sort of looking at somebody else's code and then trying to understand it all? That just, it's going to sound like a real cop-out answer, that just comes with experience. And hopefully well-written code. I believe it's more important to write code which other people can understand when you're taking part in a collaborative project. It matters less for when it's just you hacking something out for yourself. But maybe it is worth take some open source projects and look at how we can work out how they work. I kind of did that with the console Game Boy one. ROS is spelled ROS. Have you ever worked with embedded drivers for driving motors with encoders based on microcontrollers? Do you plan to make any videos on this topic? I have written drivers working with encoders. In fact, I would never use servos like this professionally. In fact, we always use DC motors with various encoding strategies. And also considerably more expensive. So this servo costs about £4. The motor systems I'm used to working with are about £700.
So I don't know where that servo sits, I don't know where it's come to rest, don't know anything about it. I guess that's something that is going to be a bit of a problem when I power it all up and it goes and locks itself up and starts bending itself everywhere. But I don't have a facility just yet for knowing where that servo actually is. However, I'm not going to let that stop me from just carrying on with the build. What microcontroller are you going to use? I'm going to use a, I had it here before, I'm going to use a
Mbed LPC1768, there we go. Bring it onto the screen there.
I quite like these. They're a little bit more expensive than an Arduino, but they are, I find them to be a little bit more professional than Arduino. They've got a nice programming environment. Are you doing Vulkan tutorial anytime soon? One of the things that you might have noticed on this channel is I've never done an OpenGL tutorial, I've never done a DirectX tutorial. And the reason being is I like to try and think that I'd rather explain what are these libraries doing rather than just how to use them. One of the things that I feel a lot of programmers that are starting out, they jump onto this this belief that they can basically use libraries to solve all of their problems, and that is true once you've sort of got the basics down, and it's getting the basics down which I think is more important. And so learning libraries like Vulkan and OpenGL, it's all great until something goes wrong or something doesn't go as expected as you were hoping for. And then the difference between good programmers and average programmers are the good programmers they understand the concept behind why the library has let them down. So they'll have a solid understanding of the maths of the matrices, for example, and understand what's going on there, rather than just hoping that there's some library function to sort it all out for them. And that's a message I'm trying to deliver through my One Lone Coder initiative.
If you have some kind of credits, that's perhaps I'm reading one of the mods. What do you think about the Arduino boy as a means of learning hardware in an easy manner? Closest thing I've done up to now is homebrew dev, but the Arduino boy seems quite charming and not too expensive.
I did a video really early on about people using things like Raspberry Pi and Arduino in order to learn programming, and I didn't feel that that's necessarily the easiest entry to the world of programming. However, if you want to learn hardware, I really do suggest, actually these days, you do need something like an Arduino or an Mbed or some sort of similar device. But you also need to just sit down with some transistors and some LEDs and some resistors and just make things happen. Before your first project shouldn't be trying to flash an LED with an Arduino. That's very trivial and simple. You take the Arduino, you take the LED, you shove them together and write some code and it blinks. But if you can understand how to make an LED blink without an Arduino, you've probably learnt a lot more. Right, let's move on with the next phase of build. Says after the estimated, well, we're assuming it's right, rotation is about this. Yeah, I don't think it is for my servos. My servos go from -60 to +60. Install the long U bracket on the bottom of the bottom servo. Note that a servo bracket is superimposed on the top to extend the joint to 2 angles of freedom. So is that telling me I should be assembling up the bracket before trying to fix it together? Who knows? What would be easier? I think it might be easier to sort of pre-assemble this bit. Let's try and make it look like the picture. So that's going to be sticking out there. That's going to be sat on the top. And it doesn't really show... little tiny picture again, what hole I'm lining up with. I think it's that one there, but that's also going to be sitting onto the plate that holds the servo together. I think we're going to start doing a bit of guesswork here. So obviously something's got to connect the servo to this plate, which I'm guessing is these little things. Now, each of my servos came with a whole bunch of connectors, so I'm also guessing that they're not used, and instead they want me to use this one, which looks like this is a simultaneous construction. Now my concern is how do I actually get this onto the bracket at the bottom?
Let's look at the imagery a little bit. I wish I had the devotion to learn electronics, but here I am making an RC plane instead.
Oh, nothing wrong with that. Hey, I'm making an RC, well, servo-based, isn't it? Robot arm. So this is the bit that I think becomes the challenging part, because I don't know where that is in where it's currently sat, and it looks like once it's on, it's never off either. So, do I need to very quickly hack something together to allow me to position this servo? Or should I just run with it? So once that's actually on there, this is threaded, so that does make life a bit easier. I was wondering how they were going to do that. You can't put the nuts on the bottom. So that's going to sit on there like that. And then all of that's going to sit on the servo. So I think that's what it's asking me to do, is it's saying what you should do is put this little cap on first. It says here, accessories can be used to adjust the angle, and by that it means take the standard mounting points of your servo and use them as tools to literally bend the servo where you want it to be. Have a look at my servo. There we go. So it says I should use this as some sort of tool to twist that into its location. Right, so, okay, so that's good. So I think we've solved this. So that's now a dead stop there. And that's a dead stop there. So if that's a dead stop, the arm is going to rotate that way there. So I probably want to fasten that something like that. So that's now got that range there. Come on. And it's also got the range to go around there. So that is now somewhere in the middle. Okay. Right. So I can plop that on. They don't feel like they plop on brilliantly. I think these might be once on, never off. They do feel like once these have gone on, I'm never getting these off. So make sure we get this kind of right. Is that as good as it gets? They not sit down? Might be as good as that gets. Let's take a look. Because when that's sat on the bearing, I think that needs to go down a bit more yet. Yes, because I don't want to be bending parts to get them to fit. So that's going to sit somewhere like that. And on top of that, through that hole there, those four positions, we mount the next joint. Right. Let me just have a quick catch up with the chat. I appreciate I've been stirring at the things. There we go. Hashing clear OLC voxel engine. I'm really pleased that that went down as well as it did. Do you find writing a header and source file for every class in C++ tedious? What do you think about writing the class all in the header file? Right, okay, that's a good question. Clearly, Console Game Engine and Pixel Game Engine are single header file solutions. That was by design because I appreciate that a lot of the people that watch my channel, it might be quite confusing for them to suddenly start pulling in lots of files. I'm trying not to be really overtly patronizing in that regard. So I wanted to come up with a solution which was reminiscent of how I used to program as a child, where you just switch your computer on and start typing. And it would have built-in drawing commands. It would put things on the screen. And I found that sort of instant accessibility very useful. So that's why they became single file solutions. However, I would always recommend separate the two. You want header file and a CPP file. I know Java does everything all in one. There are some advantages to splitting it up. There's some games you can play regarding interface. And don't forget, Java does the same sort of thing with its interface type. So it's not exclusively a C++ thing.
Let's have a look. I just watched the coding tutorials. Glad I see you live. Thank you. I don't go live on YouTube very often, but I do go live on Twitch fairly frequently. Thanks. What kind of computer science now? Since some of my friends do learn that, like interacting with score markers in assembly. Okay, good. Can you make a server client tutorial, something like chat program? Yes, I can, and I do have a plan on doing that. We very briefly looked at server and client code when I did my hacking a G13 Twitch keyboard. A G13 keyboard to handle a Twitch chat. So we wrote some code which started interacting with the Twitch chat server, which basically used sockets at the most basic level. And so that would be a good introduction. However, I've already started to write some code along the lines of OLC network server and OLC network client, which we've played with last year on the Discord server. Although I just need to get around to making the videos. Let's have another look. What else have we got? Oh, Kuva, that's good. Thank you very much. Hi, Conan. I'm thinking of getting into FPGA. Right, if you do want to get into FPGA, beware, it isn't like Arduino programming. Now, again, I don't know what your guys, or yourself, I don't know what your abilities are or what your experiences are. But I'm going to make an assumption that if you wanted to start learning these things, you would have a pretty solid understanding of microelectronics and microcontrollers before starting. FPGAs are not an entry point to any of this. Not only are they quite expensive devices, it's reasonably easy to destroy them, but actually programming them to do things of a sophisticated nature is complicated. And the tools are complicated to do. So it's quite easy to make an LED blink or to put some logic gates on there, but beyond that, then you start needing to handle in clock signals and timing sequences, and you need to look at your simulations to make sure that your clocks are in the right place and you've not got jitter and skew and all sorts of interesting things. I don't really know and mainly use Arduinos. Is this a kit? Yes, the robot arm is a kit. I posted a link somewhere in the chat. Hopefully, maybe that link can be found again. Video on voxels. Okay, the voxel thing was a bit of an April Fool's joke, mainly because I put a comment on one of my videos that I found games with cubes to be quite boring, and that seemed to upset some people. So I thought, you know what, let's just run with it for a bit. Let's see what happens. Right, so I've got my 4 screws here. Let's get back to building some arm. And I'm going to pin those down, because it looks like I pinned the whole assembly in one hit here. I mechanically wouldn't have done it like that, but it seems to be how they run with it. Because it was telling me something about grommets and all sorts of things, but I've got no place to put them. So let's screw that in. Now the flange plate that I've put on before, one of these things, is actually threaded. So even though it comes with nuts, oh hang on, is that one threaded? Yeah, they are actually threaded. So even though it's come with nuts, it's not actually asking me to put them on. So I don't know why they've supplied them with nuts. I guess some draftsman of bills of materials has decided wherever you have a screw, you have a nut. Hopefully my tea's not gone too cold. Am I too late? No, you're not too late. There's sort of no objective today other than to construct this arm. And if you wanted to, you can ask me questions about things. That'd be a bit novel. Let me just have a look at some stats. What have we got going on? Yeah, I think we will do some networking at some point. I wanted to start writing some code on sort of a console game engine based MMO, potentially taking the RPG program and extending it to do sort of MMO things. And we even trialed a very early prototype on the Discord server. Right, so that looks like I've got the full range before it deadlocks.
Good. You should never. I always feel uncomfortable back driving motors like that, but maybe that's just me. Right. Okay. So the next step is, I think we sort of duplicate what we've just done, because now that clearly is meant to hold a servo again. So I need another servo. Just see where I put that on there. So there's a bearing to attach. Lots of parts here. I'm worried that I'm going to get part contamination. So I need one of those. One of those, and a big long screw. It's given me some sort of flanged screws here, and I don't really know what they're for. Certainly the instructions haven't said that they're important. Oh, I know what they're for. They're for actually screwing down the servo into sections. That's going in the middle there. So this might actually start to compress that joint that I felt was a little bit rubbish, to be honest. But then, you know, it's a 32 quid arm. So yes, screwing that down is tightening that together. It's squeezing it together. I've not come off the bearing on the bottom. Okay, that'll do. Right, next phase. Want another servo putting in, which means I want another bearing, and it seems to imply that it goes through there.
Like that. A quick look at the chat. Will you be looking at emulation sometime? I'm not going to say anything. I would love to see networking stuff on your channel. Yeah, I think that's a definite going to happen. I've got the plans this year. I wanted to do a little bit of embedded stuff. That's really to see what the response is. All of my output so far has been software. I'm actually a hardware guy by nature, and so I just really wanted to see if people like it or they don't. But the other plans I've got a video on MIDI and MIDI synthesis coming up, so that's a sort of a carry-on from the Code It Yourself synthesizer. I've obviously got the top-down Car Crime City game. That's ongoing. Don't think that it's all completely stalled and stopped. The reason there's a delay on that is I'm trying to build up most of it before I start making the series of videos, because what I don't want to do is end up in a situation where I make a video episode and then suddenly decide, actually, I don't want to do it that way, and then the next video is undoing everything I've already done. So I want to get that reasonably complete before I start filming the series, and I've just finished off the traffic simulation, so all of the non-player vehicles are all sort of autonomously moving around the city. And I also want to emphasize that all of the videos that I've done this year, if you haven't noticed already, are very much related to the Car Crime City game. We've looked at how we embed Lua, we've looked at collision detection between rotated polygons, we looked at, well, had a quick look at operator overloading. That'll make some of the code easier. So it's all part of a bigger plan. I didn't know of the April 1st joke I asked you on Discord about voxels. From my perspective, hardware would be wonderful. I actually found you through having to learn C++ for embedded work. Thanks for making programming cool and accessible. Oh, no problem. Well, I've been surprised with the response. I always find it difficult to try what's the right audience to pitch at. I've always made sure that my channel doesn't assume you know nothing. It's the idea is you've learned some Hello World, you've learned loops, you've learned a bit of programming. What can you do with those ideas? Because that's why I thought there was a bit of a void, really. Lots of people say this is how you set up your integrated development environment. This is how you specify arguments to your compile. And there's millions and millions of videos that do that, but not very many videos that tell you how to actually do stuff. There's also lots of videos that are just show-off projects as well, which I don't find that useful for learning. They're inspiring, but not necessarily useful. Have I just picked up a servo and lost it already? No, there we go.
Right, I think I'm on to the next page. As you can see, they got bored with the translation and just started throwing more and more pictures at it. So this servo comes out. Each rudder bracket should be mounted with movable bearings on one side. Yeah, we know that already. So that's going to sit on there. And that's going to hold, I believe, that's going to hold an arm on like that. So then we've got motion like that and motion like that. So let's assemble that up.
I think it should be a car named Vauxhall in the top-down car crime game.
Well, there is going to be some interesting names in the car crime game because my Patreons or Patreons are going to be featured individually, those that have said that it's okay to do so. The other side to the car crime game is hopefully when it's all finished, it should be, by design, very modifiable. I'm hoping that actually members of the Discord community will have some fun creating silly missions for it, and they've already started creating graphics and buildings and things, which are really nice. That's not fitted. Go in there. There we go. That's better. Let's put you back in there so I don't lose you. And I need another nut. Oh no, I don't need another nut. Put one on already. There we go. There's one on there. One on there. I'll just make sure these are nice and tight.
Why do you not want to say anything about whether or not you'll be doing emulation? I don't want to say.
The thing with emulation is I find emulation to be a fascinating topic, and particularly because it's got a hardware bias as well. The downside is it's not about creating emulators, which is the difficult bit. It is difficult. It's how do I represent that in a video form in a way which is accessible. The downside is it's just not a simple topic, right? A lot of my videos,
I think most people can come to them and assume they can watch them without sort of any background knowledge. At least that's how I try to pitch it. You can have a look at this idea and just run with it. Emulation, there's a lot going on in the background which the viewers would probably need to be primed with. So you probably need to know how CPU architectures work. You need to know how clock timing works. You need, or else it's going to become a series that never ends. So I'm thinking about how I can present that in a sensible way, because I think there's also a blurry line between where is it emulation and where is it just a virtual machine, and doing one is easier than the other. So I will say this though, I have got about 60% of the code written for an emulator, which I was planning on showing maybe towards the end of this year. But that's all I'm going to say on the matter. Do you build Earthfix models and other miniatures when I was younger?
Do you know what? I used to. I come from a family where model railways are a big deal. And it never really stuck because I was more interested in computers. I didn't really have the patience for sitting down and trying to get everything super precise. Computers give you that immediate feedback. It works, it doesn't, it compiles, it doesn't, it crashes, it doesn't. But having to sit down for a week or so and carefully piece something together, as a child I was too impatient. Right, so I think what we need to do is work out what the angle needs to be for this arm. So I need to put a flange plate on again, don't I?
I could do it like Biscuit does, but
yeah, Biscuit's done. I like Biscuit. I think he's one of my programming idols. I think Biscuit's his videos are great if you are already au fait with programming, and I think that's exactly the audience that he targets. He targets people that already know what it is that he's doing. He's just showing you an interesting way around doing it. So I do enjoy his videos. Hang on a second to make sure I'm doing this right. I need to work out where the centre is on that again, don't I? Because it says the angle that I'm looking for here is, I'm guessing, fully vertical, or no, it's actually saying it needs to go all the way. So this is another all the way back and forth one. Okay. So let's try and find, first dead stop is there. So if I just take that off the limit and put that there. No, sorry, wrong. Put it on, just take it off the limit and put it there. So that should go all the way around and back on itself. Okay, so assuming it's going to be vertical to start with like that, that seems like a sensible place. So let's put on the second flange plate, just roughly. And this bit seems a bit fiddly, that you've got to sort of bend the piece in order to get it to fit. I wouldn't have designed it like that. So it just seems a bit brutal. There we go. So that's now sat over the bearing. Now we want it vertical, didn't we? Something like that. There. Now, this time, we'll fasten up the central mounting screw first. Need to find them in my bag of screws. The one with the bearings in. We'll get that to clamp down. Hey, don't start turning. Okay, that seems to have sat quite nicely on there. Now we're going to fasten this one through. So there's not, but whereas the last one we went through several layers of plates, this one looks like we're just going through the one. Because we're going to extend this arm out. So I want these 4 screws here.
Let's have a quick look. What's going on? Thank you. Timao? It's
on there. Make sure we're still visible. That's good. That's 1. Hey. There we go. Well, I'm pleased with the view count. I honestly wasn't expecting this many people because I didn't make any sort of announcement of what's going on. So maybe it's just nice, pleasant Sunday afternoon background noise. I get a lot of comments that say they just put my voice on and it helps them go to sleep. So, don't know whether that's a good or a bad thing, but hey. I'll just tighten up that this bearing nut on the back. There we go. So now we've got 1 degree of freedom, 2 degrees of freedom, okay, good. Getting sort of a nice collection of nuts, which I'm not using for things. Right, so to that, it says we need to extend the arm piece out with the similar looking bracket. So we take another one of these, and that's going to sit on there, thus. Which I'm guessing is just standard nuts and bolts again. Well, let's put some of those in.
Is this robot arm going to be subject in a bigger series about forward reverse kinematics?
Do you know what? It could be. Certainly simple kinematics. So in forward kinematics is trivial. The downside to this arm is I have no way of getting the feedback of the position back into the software. Servos are just sort of fire and forget. You give them an idea of where you want them to be, and they do their best to get there. So they work by having a motor geared to the output, which we can see, but they're also geared to a potentiometer, and inside there's a small H-bridge circuit which drives the motor under some sort of loose PID control, which I have no control over the settings of what those things are. I guess it's not even that sophisticated. It's probably just P, really. And so I have no way of getting that information back. So when you're doing robotics properly, one of the most important things is that you know where your robot is at all times, and that's why having the encoder coming back out, knowing its position coming back out to your software is quite important, because then you can do things, for example, if the arm starts to lift a particularly heavy load, its actual position might be quite different from where you expect it to be in your control algorithms. So just relying on this little controller in here to sort all that out for you, I'm unsure about. Particularly when you've got heavy loads and so you start getting inertia into your systems, you really do want sort of that precise uncoupled feedback going into your software so you can do something about it. But little servos like this don't give you that luxury. Maybe there's a modification to make in the future where we can get encoder output, but then it starts becoming a big tangle of wires. Another screw.
Stream popped up on my view count is way too low. Channel.
Well, I appreciate that. I've never been number hunting. I've been more concerned about just making sure that there is at least 1 or 2 videos out there which may have some valuable programming content in. It does seem that people are responding well to it, so I'm very grateful for that. Stream popped up on my you can eat it whilst you're eating a cheeseburger. Good, good. I kind of want a cheeseburger now, thanks for that. Are these plastic or Metal Gear? Apparently they're Metal Gear servos. It says on them MG996R. That's all I know about it. I got no data sheet. We did find a data sheet online. We found several. They were terrible and misleading. But on Friday night I did a quick Twitch stream to get these things moving around. Now the interesting thing will be when I initially power all of this up and the servos decide to go to whatever whatever location they want. I've got no kind of software limit switches on here. I can't tell it to stop at a particular angle. So I imagine when we first power it up, it's going to try and tear itself to bits. But that probably won't be today. Sorry to disappoint everybody there. When I say bad, I mean to new programmers, the API of the OS maybe I've obviously missed some conversation that's going on there. Anyway, that seems to be moving okay. There's going to be quite a lot of moment on that servo. So I believe they're rated to fairly high torque. but we'll see. I mean, we'll see what the rest of the kit involves. So I've put that extender on, so now it says we're up to part 6. We use the same method, adjust the angle of the steering gear to the appropriate position, and then start to install the U-shaped part. This is just awful, it's rubbish. So part 7, install the next combination part below. Requires the servo bracket and an L-shaped part. Okay, well, the servo bracket we have. L-shaped part we have. I can move those out the way. L-shaped part we have. A little tiny picture of it. So what it's suggesting is I've got my thing like that. We're going to stick a bearing through there again, and we're going to fasten this L-shaped part to the underside of there. No, that can't be right. It's got to be the other way around. No, there we go. So that's going on like that. Just fastened in. I'm just trying to look at the bigger picture going forward. What have we got here? And so that's going to sit on here with the servo in and the bearing mount. Okay. Well, first things first, let's stick the little bearing in. We can do that bit. Hey Thomas, I see we're getting a few bits of spam going on in the chat. I hope it's not too offensive anyway. Thank you. Alright, okay. Thank you, Peter. Right, that's going to sit on there with a bearing going through it. So same sort of thing again. Put the flange on and tighten this up. That sits on there. The bearing is free to rotate, so it just gives it a nice low resistance coupling point for when that plops into there. At which point, before I put the servo on, I want to fasten this on, and I'm only fastening that on with 2 screws apparently. Again, it says using M8 screws, so it's given me a bag full of M6 screws, but I've no idea what I'm using these for. And it's not identified why I need these M6. Everything is M3 by 8. M3 by 8. So at some point we're going to run out of M3 by 8s. I want to make a full screen game with the Pixel game engine without putting the height and width in manual. This is very, very easy. When you call the construct function, the last argument set to true. Bang, full screen. And it'll maintain the aspect ratio as well. So if you've got some sort of weird aspect ratio or some more traditional 4:3, it'll go full screen but put black bars either along the top or along the bottom. That was a feature introduced in the latest version, which was uploaded a couple of weeks ago. Hey Magetsup, good. I'm glad that you are here because Gorbit has now left. So congratulations, there you are. I'm just going to tighten this one up and tighten this one up. iProgramming CPP, hello, yes, oh, good. Good to see some familiar names and faces turning up. You will need to do that. You will need to do that. Yes, yes, I will. I'm definitely going to run out of the right shape screws. But it doesn't. The instructions aren't saying M6 anywhere. And yeah, see, I have a little bit of a concern about it because I'm slowly running out of M8 screws. The thread on this one's a bit dodgy. I have to get the pliers out. There we go. Sorted. Sorted, not bad. Nice and tight. And do that one nice and tight as well.
This reminds me of the mechanics kit that my parents gave me when I was 7 years old.
Oh, we used to have Meccano over here. I wonder if that's a similar sort of thing. Right, so I've got my bearing in, I've got my plate together. I have yet again misplaced my servo. I'll take a new servo. And it looks like the servo this time is going to be fitted that way round. There we go. I'll take a big set of nuts and bolts for the servo. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
How long will it take to build it?
Don't know. I don't think much longer. Well, there's like a claw mechanism and things to work on yet, so have to see. You don't want to rush these things. You know, half the fun is in the building of it, and given it was so cheap, you know, I'm getting a lot of pleasure out of putting it together, and then hopefully we'll do some silly things with it in code. I'm a bit concerned about that one. Am I supposed to put anything on that before I fasten all of this together? Doesn't seem to suggest that I do. I think that's going to be a bit fiddly later, but we'll see. Fat fingers again. Yeah, you need dainty little fingers for stuff like this. There we go.
I have problems with the mouse. I want to make the rotation in the game with the mouse, but when I reach the limits of the screen, I stop.
That's because in Pixel Game Engine, if you're not in the main window, there's no mouse coordinate information going to it. You could just break into your operating system's API to get that information. Is this build going to be combined with another robot? Not intentionally. I don't know, maybe. There we go. Number 4.
Maybe make the robot arm hold a camera and make a face cam. Do you know what? That's actually not a daft idea. Because I actually have some interesting algorithms on face tracking. I started a series about augmented reality where I was doing image processing. And I actually, when I was at university, I'd finished my undergraduate course and I went on to do ultimately a PhD, but I started work on a vision system. So we were interested in sort of artificial retinas and how can we process imagery the way the brain does. And so that's why I've got a bit of a background knowledge in things like augmented reality, because it's really just image processing, but trying to do real-time image processing. And I was interested in the neurological ways that we do image processing. But where am I going with this? Ultimately, I developed technology and software to do this. And to try it out, we would take sort of loads of different established algorithms, one of which was the, whenever you hold your camera up and now it puts a circle around everybody's faces and tries to work out. So it's not face recognition, but it's face detection. And there's a nice little algorithm you can use to do this. In fact, if you Google Viola Jones, that gives you all of the resources that you need for that. Ah, the tech egg, hello. You need to calculate the mouse movement. Oh, that's not to me.
Good, okay.
Oh, what have we got?
Some Twitch followers. I have quite a few Twitch followers, so I'm guessing I've never really. I'm rubbish at pushing the channel. I don't sort of publicise the fact that we have a Twitch or a Patreon or any of that sort of thing. And so I guess maybe people don't realise. Also, there's a great Discord server that you can join. Lots of people on there that can help you out, and people really keen to sort of help beginners out, like myself.
This chat sucks. Which chat?
Thank you, Magetsu. Magetsu's like, you know, my most trusted moderator. Right. What am I doing with this one? So it says I've got to try and work out the angle of the servo again. What am I fastening to it? So mine does look like that. It's put it in that orientation. This is going to be mounted. This is going to be mounted L-shaped bracket up like that, and it needs to travel sort of between the 3 and 6 o'clock positions. Let's find a dead stop again on there. But I'm mounting this one specifically at 90 degrees. I reckon we're going to get this one wrong. So that's got to, the idea of this is it goes, you see that diagram contradicts what it's just told me to do. I think that one goes in there. Hang on, so they've got the arm that way round, pointing around the front. Okay, so that's now going in there. So when that's back, what they want is this to sort of go from there to there. Right, so let's find the first dead stop, which is there, which will be the full, we'll come off it a little bit, will be the full forward, about there. And so then it should travel all the way back like that to about there. So if I assume then about that, let's pick a flange, that's now, I want that sort of 90 degrees to the arm. Okay. Yes, this is a kit. No, it's not an Arduino, it's an Mbed LPC1768, which I think are better than Arduinos. And I just want to make sure I get this the right way around again before we get carried away. See, that contradicts what it's... one diagram's saying it should be that way up, and the other diagram is saying it should be that way up. I guess it doesn't really matter. I just need to choose one and run with it. Just make sure I've got this right. So that's going to sit there. Can't turn anymore that way. So if I pin that there, so that can now turn back on itself and quite the way down. So that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with that. Yeah, I prefer the cable coming out that side because I can potentially cable tie those together then. Right. So if that's the case, I want to put a flange on there now, 90 degrees. And I'm going to, this is a horrible bending bit again that we've got to do in order to get this to fit. I don't like this. Doesn't feel right, that to me. But now when we tighten this up, that's going to be about there. Okay, good.
Where did we buy this kit? So, let me catch up with the chat. Oh, so yes, so somebody's just somebody's just dropped the link in. Yeah. Yes, it is the cheapest, most nasty robot arm kit I could find on Amazon. But that said, you know what? It's better than I expected it to be. What we'll probably find is I'll power it up and none of the servos will work properly, or they'll be dreadfully inefficient and I'll need to go and get a 300 amp power supply just to make it twitch a little bit, but we'll see. So, as you may have noticed, how would you suggest learning C++?
Oof, big question. Do you know, I'm a little bit controversial in this regard because I actually think C++ is a great language for beginners, and not everybody will agree with that statement at all. And I think most people. I wonder if I'm supposed just to say. I'm just getting distracted because I wonder if these M6 screws I'm supposed to be using for these flange plate mounts. That would make sense. Has it told me in the past? Because they're sticking through quite a bit, and unnecessarily so. They're okay on that one because they went through 3 things, but on that one they seem a bit long. So I'm going to take a gamble and use the 6mm screws here. And maybe we'll need to replace those. What I was saying, how do you begin learning C++? Well, I did a video on sort of advice for new programmers. And in that video I made the claim that you should really just get stuck in. I know that's a really rubbish answer, but it's don't be afraid of just trying it. Just start writing code. There's nothing a book is going to teach you straight away. Other than it'll teach you how to write a standard cout hello world, but other than that, just get stuck in, get your hands dirty. Don't worry about writing perfect code. Ugh, this is getting messy now. We just unback that off a little bit and just slacken you off a bit so I can line those holes up. There we go.
Could I save up some? Looks like it's made from off-the-shelf components. Have you ever made a voice cloning algorithm?
No, I believe that's something Biscuit's just been doing, isn't it? I'm a bit behind on my YouTube videos. Why is that not fitting into there? I think we've got our first... Yeah, it fits now. There we go.
I'm learning C++ by using his videos. Yeah, you know, my videos, they're not really designed for people to be... I've never programmed before. They do expect that you've got a little bit of background knowledge. But then the idea is that I try to use features which introduce new and interesting things. So I got an interesting comment the other day. Why have you used a tuple here? Why could you not just use a struct? And of course I can just use a struct, but out of using a tuple, I know that quite a few people then Googled what a tuple was. And so in my eyes, that's a win. Just tighten that up, there we go. So that feels a bit more robust. So now we've got 3 degrees of movement now. So we've got left and right. We've got a main extension backwards and forwards, and we've got whatever this is going to be. I guess a reach. Yeah, writing the code to control all of this interestingly is going to be a lot of fun, I think. I'm also going to introduce probably what is completely overkill for this, but I've seen a lot of hobby projects where people just take a UART and throw data at it, and hey ho, it's all brilliant. And what I'm going to show is using cyclic redundancy checks to make sure that your communication protocols are really robust, and they'll all be sort of self-synchronizing as well. So it doesn't matter what order you switch things on, and if something goes wrong, it's not going to crash your host or the microcontroller. I think these are the type of things which I think once you've got a UART up and running, you really need to be thinking about if you're serious about comms in any way. What is my job? Hang on, let me get back up. I would really love if you do a video, absolute beginner. Yeah, I get that request a lot. I'm thinking about it. I started the second channel, Javidx9 Extra, to perhaps include some real beginner material. I'm undecided yet, but you know, it's good to get the feedback that I might be doing that. Join the Discord. What is your job? What do I do? I work for a company that builds and develops robots, actually, simple robots for the inspection of nuclear reactors, oil and gas, aerospace, heavy industry, that sort of thing. In fact, I don't do very much coding there anymore. I do tend to coordinate people that can do that sort of thing. But it's good fun. It's always varied and different, and you get to learn a lot about weird and wonderful industries. I wasn't watching from the beginning. That's okay, don't worry, it was pretty much like this. Rogue, this bothers me. The easiest thing I've ever seen. It's got something to do with web development in there, so I've stopped reading. Javid, will you be writing the code for it in this stream as well? Probably not in this stream. We'll see what happens. I just want to get the construction done, but I will certainly be making a proper channel video on how to program and control all of this, because I've mentioned to other people, perhaps you weren't here, I want to test the water to see how responsive are people to me doing things on things like embeds and platforms like that, rather than just always being desktop applications. Right, we're up to the next phase of the arm, which I believe is the next joint. I guess I'm going to need some of these metal bits. Let's have a look. So it says now, to this I want to install that. I'm pretty pleased with the size of this arm. I'm just going to make sure that my video camera is now getting all of this in. Right, so somewhere about there. So, we need more nuts and bolts. Tell you what I will do, before I get carried away, I will swap over these ones down here for the M6s. Because in my bag of M8, so M3x8, I've got far more nuts than I've got screws. So I'm thinking these should have been the 6mm ones, not the 8mm ones. So I'll just quickly swap those over. One. Going on. Simple robots. As a 14-year-old, reading something like the primer really slows me down. I completely agree. Don't read it. You know, there'll be a lot of people grumbling, going, "Oh well, you know, you're not programming the way I learned to do things." And I guess regular viewers of my channel will be quite familiar with the fact that I think it's wrong to try and strive for absolute best practice from day one of programming. You gain nothing from doing that. And I know that's controversial, and I'll get complaints. People will write me emails saying you shouldn't be saying stuff like that. And one of the things that I've tried on my channel, and I believe you can go back through all of the videos if anybody fancies this challenge, I've never said on my channel what you should and shouldn't do. And I'm conscious about doing that. I think it's more, these are things you can do, and these are fun things to try, and this is how you can have a go at it, but I've never sort of said, look, do it this way or don't do it this way. Because there's no learning in that. That's just repeating what somebody's telling you to do. What have we got? I'll look at the chat. What kind of tea is that? This is Darjeeling tea, loose leaf. It's gone cold now though, so I won't drink it. Is it possible to make the cursor disappear in the Pixel game engine? Yes, you can. It's an OS call though. I think it's just set cursor null or something like that, but it's not part of the Pixel game engine. Right, so I've put my smaller screws on there. We're now on to assembling this onto there. I'm conscious that I'm not on the screens anymore, so I hope everything is still quite visible. So I'll use those 4 screws that I've just taken off, and since I've got nuts all over the place, I'll just pinch some of the ones that are dangling around. Oh, I'll drop one on the floor now. That'll be the nut that makes it all work later. Right, these are going to be fun to put in. I knew I should have done this before I put the motor on, but the instructions didn't say. That's what you get for following the instructions. This is going to be a nightmare. Get on there. Right, there's some precision plier work here. Stay. Stay. Nope, came off. Stay. Do you know what? I might not bother with that one. Come back to that one. Let's do an easier one first.
do the top one.
How did you start programming?
When I started programming, I mentioned before, I was quite young. I had a BBC Micro, and when you bought a computer in those days, you just booted it up, it went beep, and then you were presented with a command prompt. There was no operating system or anything like that, and into that command prompt you could start just typing code. And this intrigued me as a young programmer. I thought, this is brilliant. Look, this machine in front of me, this big, noisy machine, is obeying my will. And I found that very gratifying. And when you bought a computer back then, they didn't do anything. You had to load programs onto them, and nothing was ever stored sort of permanently unless you could afford disk drives and tape drives and that sort of thing. So you had to type in the programs for what you wanted them to do. And so you get magazines which would have just big long code listings in, and you'd sit there typing out the programs and they'd never work. But they'd also come with a user manual. And the user manual would list sort of all of the basic programming commands. So for my particular computer, it was BASIC. It wasn't C++ back then, which wasn't the fastest language in the world, but it's very simple to use and pleasing results. So I was just absorbed by these programming manuals. I've still got them all somewhere. I came a bit of an old computer book library in my attic. This one is proving fiddly, mainly because the arm is sort of now moving under its own steam whilst I'm trying to hold these things down. Come here. Stay everybody with me. Will it to happen? Will it? Yeah, there we go. Good.
There's a message there in a language I can't sort of translate in real time. Is it worth doing a PhD in something you don't thoroughly enjoy, like applied math?
Very, very good question. Don't do PhDs for the sake of doing PhDs. I did a PhD. And I really, unless you have already got an interesting idea or you've come up with a solution and you just want the vehicle to go about executing it, then do a PhD. Doing a PhD doesn't really open any more doors or anything like that. It is really, it's a personal thing. It's a personal thing. If you feel like you've got some solution and you need the resources and the facilities to go about doing experiments, then definitely take up a PhD. You don't get taught anything. Everything is self-learning, so it is a personal journey you must go on.
Did I even answer the question? What was the question? Is it worth doing a PhD in something you don't thoroughly enjoy?
I chose to do a PhD in something I didn't really know very much about. The intention was I would take all of my computing knowledge and apply it to solve problems in a field which was struggling for solutions at the time. And so I was fortunate enough that doing the PhD, doing it day in, day out, it's 7 days a week, didn't ruin the subject matter for me. As a result, I still enjoy programming. What I don't enjoy anymore is artificial intelligence and machine learning, because I did it solidly for 4 years. It ruined it for me. Even though I was pretty good at it and I was up to date at it, now I don't want to have anything to do with it. So I would suggest do PhDs in fields that aren't things that you want to enjoy for the rest of your life. But that's just me. People are different. This one's been really fiddly. Bad robot. Now, surely it's not going to stay there, is it? Right.
What have we got? How did you become a professional software developer? Am I up to that one, or have I missed some already? Yes, I did discover computers never do what I want them to do. How did you become a professional software developer?
Through great luck. So I was quite a good programmer before I went to university. So I chose at university not to study
Sort of software engineering or anything. I didn't see much point in that. I was more interested in how can I apply
programming to that. And so I went through university, I did a course called Computer Systems Engineering, which is sort of looks at the interfaces between how do you use software and how do you use it in the real world. I was going to remind myself of what the question was. How did you become a software developer? And I stayed at university for quite some time. I did my undergraduate there, and then I went on to do a postgraduate, and then I went on to do doctorate, and then I went on to do postdoctorate, and then I went on to do researching. And I was very, very fortunate that one day somebody came into my office at university and said, we want you to set up an R&D department for our company. And at the time I was getting a bit bored of university, so I went and did that. And so for the first few years I was writing software and building hardware and electronics and things. And then now I don't do very much of that even anymore now, sadly. So which is great for me because it means I could start the channel. If I was programming all day, the last thing I would want to do when I get home is programming. Have a look. The first language I learned was Commodore Basic. Yeah, it's not too dissimilar to BBC Basic. In multi-threading, in the command prompt, is the output stream a critical shared resource amongst multiple thedens that use it? Therefore, you should use mutex exclusions. Well, that's a tough question right in the middle of a robot chat. In multi-threading, in the command prompt, is the output stream a critical shared resource? I think it's guarded by the OS anyway. What you may find is you won't crash the output stream, but you'll see that if you've got multiple threads writing, it'll just turn out gibberish. So I don't think you need to manually protect it, but you probably want to, so your own program isn't outputting things out of order. What will the robotic hand be for? It's going to be ultimately controlled by Twitch. What other coding channels do you watch, and which one do you like the most? That's a tough question because I don't particularly watch many other coding channels, mainly because I don't really want my output to just jump on the bandwagon of what other coding channels are doing. I've noticed that things seem to come and go in fashions. I'm totally unfamiliar with social media and the internet, even though I have a YouTube channel. It's not really a world I live in. But on the Discord server, I noticed that things come and go in phases. So when it started, everybody was making virtual PCs, and then after that, everybody was doing what was the next big one? That everybody was doing Mario Brothers style platform games, and then after that, everybody started doing. Recently, everybody started doing raycasting engines. So I guess these are triggered by things that are going on out there across various social media platforms, but I don't know. Although I do, the channels that I've linked to on my channel page, they tend to be members of the community, so they don't have huge followings, but they've been producing lots of interesting stuff. And particularly if you're into hardware and stuff like that, I really recommend Breck Martin. You can find his channel linked on my channel page. He is a proper electronics nerd, and his projects are amazing. How he does them in such short time, I've no idea. Let me have a look. Do you think that learning C++ when I'm 14 years old is good? Will it disappear in the future? I don't feel C++ is going anywhere anytime soon. I know some people will disagree. It is one of the few languages which has hung around. And as a result, there's a huge amount of code written in it. There's a huge wealth of experience written in it. From a business perspective, it makes a very difficult business case to suddenly jump onto some new language. And as I think we see that the web world is very different. I really feel sorry for the people who have to learn a completely new framework every 3 days just to stay relevant and current. It's not quite like that in industry. So you tend to see the big old school languages still hanging around a lot. So I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. And if you can program fluently in C++, you can very easily adapt to other languages. That's certainly my experience. Would you ever do a series on writing a simple operating system? Maybe. Again, they become a bit tricky, that you've got to explain sort of all of the hardware that's going on behind the scenes. Right, I'm going to get on with building the next section of ARM, I think. Enough chat for the time being. Right, where are we up to? So I've put on this big tuning fork thing on the top. I'm probably going to have to find a way of securing the base of the arm. I've not worked that out yet. But we're on to the next bit, which is yet again installing one of these things. So it says we've got 2 this time, and these are the sort of the last 2 main metal bits. So I think we're getting up to the claw, are we? 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, okay. So there's dual. It's getting quite complicated. I'm hoping it sort of implies that there are more metal bits that I've forgotten to put on already. But we'll see. Right, so I've got these 2 bits, and now I want to fasten them in that configuration. So one is like that, and oddly, one is like that. Okay, with a nut and a bolt, and then we stick a bearing in usual place. Okie dokie, let's do that then. Nuts and bolts. One going through, get in there, there we go. On the back. Finally caught this live stream. Well, I do live stream on Twitch a lot more than I live stream on YouTube. I find this is going to sound very strange. I don't cope incredibly well with large live audiences, which is particularly when somebody wants me to do programming, because I do feel the need to interact with people who are chatting. Oh yeah, if you've not watched Breck's stuff, watch Breck's stuff. He does really crazy things. He makes everything from scratch, and he's clearly a really smart guy. He makes Tesla coils, and then one week he'll make a radio, and then the next week he'll make a modification for his car, and he's currently on a little tiny bit of a YouTube break, but he's still publishing sort of every couple of weeks rather than every week like he used to. And I owe him a lot, because he when I had about 40 subscribers, which wasn't that long ago really, he did a video, because he found my Tetris video and he implemented Tetris on one of his display modules, and he did a shout out to my channel, and I think at the time I was already thinking of this YouTube thing's just not going anywhere, nobody's watching anything, and I was about to pack it in, and he featured me in one of his videos, and I was over the moon. So it's really worth checking out his stuff. Right, so the next one is, what have we got there? Twitch follow. Use M3/8 screw and M3 nut in this. Oh, we need to stick a bearing in this yet, don't we? So I've only got 1 bearing left. I hope there's no more bearings to go.
I don't know why they seem to all batch up like that. Sure, I've got the.
Right, so let's stick this on here. So that's in that orientation. That's going to go on the back there, like that little flange bearing. Which means obviously I'm going to be mounting a servo in here. Very nice, just going to little back that up. What I would typically want to do, and I've not got it here, is I would thread lock a lot of these things, because I can see it after a few uses, everything's going to vibrate and shake loose. So I'd be tempted to somehow secure it all. Right, so I'm going to take the servo, and I'm going to mount the servo. Need a servo. Oh, I've got to use. Oh, I wonder if I've got a strange feeling they've sent me more servos than I actually need. Which is no bad thing, of course, unless I've clearly missed one out. So I've got one here. Oh, okay, no, I haven't. Okay, that's good. Yeah, it's so far so good. All right. That's going to go on there, and that's going to get mounted on there. So I need big nuts and bolts for servos. What would be a C++ GUI framework of choice? WX widgets. Don't even need to think about it. I think it's brilliant. I use it professionally. I use it as a hobby. It's completely free, open source. It's very powerful. With a little bit of effort, you can make it look very modern. It's easy to set up, and it's completely cross-platform. Next. Will this video be on YouTube after the live stream? Yes, it will. I'll put it up as on the main channel, which is a bit of a risk for me because I'm aware that some people go, "Ooh, I don't want to watch hardware streams. I'm unsubscribing." Fair enough, but that's okay. You know what? It filters people out. I like interacting with the people in the YouTube comments. I think I've got a good track record for replying to YouTube comments, and as soon as I start getting too many, that's probably a sign to cull the audience somehow. What specs do you need to program? In terms of computer specs, well, I guess ultimately no specs at all, right? Because we used to be able to program on computers back in the 70s quite happily. And they, of course, had no specs at all, really. But I think typically now you don't need very much at all. If you're on a Linux machine, basically nothing. You know, 2 megabytes of RAM, perhaps, maybe. I don't know, nothing at all. If you want to run something like Visual Studio and all of its debugging tools, then yeah, you need a moderately good PC, but again, not very much. That's what I like about it. It's a nice, easy entry hobby. It doesn't cost very much to do. Most of the tools have gone completely free now, which took far too long, I think. But well done, Microsoft, for going free with Visual Studio. I know completely why they did that. And it was a strategy I saw that the electronics developers, their vendors, were making all of their software free. So universities would adopt them, and therefore you're breeding an army of electronics developers that only know how to use your software. So Microsoft are doing exactly the same. Make all of your development tools free, so people instinctively know how to use them when they leave university. It's unreal that you responded to something I asked. Thank you so much. Keep the vids coming. It's okay, I'm trying. I learned C++ while watching your videos, had some programming background. That's the perfect way, I think. Is I also try to, even though I use C++, a lot of my videos, the language doesn't matter at all. Because I try to present them in such a way that don't rely on C++ exclusive tricks. This one's a little bit more complicated than the others have been. So I've got basically 2 servos being mounted to this. I've done... Which one have I done? I've done the one at the top, so mine look like that. That one's going to now be mounted like this in this arm. So I need to put a flange on that. And the purpose of this servo, they've not given me sort of an angle, you see. On all of the other servos, they've given you an angle to aim for. And they haven't done that on this one. So I'll have to play with that for a minute. So that's going to sit on there. It's almost as if the cable's just coming out the wrong way on that. Still not entirely sure which way round the arm's supposed to be. But I guess we're going to have to make that decision soon, because the hand will be going on it. And which way do I want my hand to be? So it's got it upright like that. Let's have a look at the final image here. It doesn't give me an angle, so I'm going to have to play with this one a bit more manually. The instructions haven't been very good on the whole. Oh, my tea's already gone cold. I think I answered the GUI framework of choice question already, did I? Or am I behind? Anyways, WX widgets. Hey Thews, how you doing? Good to see you. This is a bit of an unusual stream. I don't usually stream on YouTube. And Thews, you've been asking for hardware videos for some time, so there we go. Had a good stream on Friday night where we were programming my little microcontroller. Do you have any reverse engineering experience, soft or hardware? Not sort of specifically, I do have to reverse engineer hardware a fair bit at work, because some of the robots that were built by my company last for 25, 30 years, and when they come back in needing repair, we haven't always got the paperwork. So that's suggesting I should be putting it on like that. Okay. Right, so what angle of movement do we think we're going to need here? Let's find the dead point again. So that's the first dead point. Let's move off it a little bit. So if I now mount that to be 90 degrees that way, if I mount that there, that gives me travel in that direction, and it stops a bit prematurely there. So perhaps I want a bit more. I want it to be, so if that stops prematurely there, I want that angle probably to be a bit sharper, so about there. So that gives me travel from there. I think that's going to be quite an important one to have angles going down on. So I'm a bit more, I think, gone the wrong way. I want that to be something like that. So go all the way down, and that stops about there. So if I line that one up to be parallel with the arm there, that's where I'll put the flange on. Okay.
What about making games? Well, I do make games. Was there anything you had to unlearn or had difficulty learning after teaching yourself programming? That's a good question. What have I had to unlearn? I don't think I've ever had to unlearn anything. There are habits that you get into and things that you probably shouldn't be doing, but you tend to do. For me, one of the things was the transitioning over to modern C++, or so-called modern C++, having to put namespaces in front of absolutely everything. I still don't see the point in it. I know purists will tell me all of the great reasons why you should be doing that, but I find it a bit tiresome. The YouTube stream seems to self-advertise for you rather well. Well, that's good. Like, I don't really understand the difference between SDL and OpenGL. SDL is a layer on top of something like OpenGL or DirectX, just to make life a bit easier for you. OpenGL really just gives you access to hardware. It doesn't understand the concept of drawing anything, really. Right? So it's not, it won't say, oh, this is a model, and this is a model with this attribute in your game. It doesn't work on that level. It just gives you access to hardware. Whereas SDL and SFML, they give you things like sprites and objects and meshes and things in advance to work with. Right, let me just do this horrible bending bit again, which we don't like doing. That was a bit easier than normal. There we go. So let's now screw that in. The towering robot was running out of sort of vertical space for you guys to see what's going on. So let's try and collapse the robot a bit. There we go. Right, short little M6 screws to fasten the flange to this bracket. What was the most difficult subject you had studying robotics? Interesting question. I think for me, the most difficult subject was... It wasn't, because I never really studied robotics. I did robotics as a side role to my PhD, so there was no sort of specific course I went on. But I did find some of the probabilistic modelling of robots to be a little bit tricky. I know a lot of my videos have maths in them, but I'm by no means a maths expert. And suddenly you're thrown into a world where you've got all of these strange symbols and sort of underlying rules which need to be thoroughly understood before you can start to exploit them. I'll let Andreas have that message. WX Widgets is really just antique and ugly.
some people will say that it does depend on how much you're prepared to go actually customizing it, but as a back-end GUI tool, I really rate it. Well, that's what I like about the coding community. Everybody's got different opinions about things, and no one person is right. Right? The correct answer is choose the tool that solves your problem with the least resistance. Right, so that is another degree of freedom. Very nice. I've noticed that the cables are not going to be long enough, but hey ho. Right, so now I think we're getting towards the business end of adding the hand. Now I need my last servo. My last servo is the one that we were hacking on Thursday night, which is over here. So on Friday night we did a quick little. I wanted to test all my cameras and everything like that, so I did a quick little Twitch stream where we programmed this microcontroller to interface to one of these servos. It was more a test of how all of this can work. It's quite a complicated setup I've got going on. Have a look at the chat. What do you think about the CPP core guidelines? Don't know. Don't think I've read them. Hello. And what are your thoughts on the Vulkan API? I have actually played with a little bit of Vulkan. Let's make sure I get this the right way around before I start. So it's saying... So I quite like the idea of having all of my cables coming out of one side. So I think that's what I'm going to run with. I'm going to mount that on there like that. Yeah, I've had a little bit of a play with Vulkan. In fact, I played with it sort of on day one it was released, which was probably a bit premature. Because everybody was excited about it. And I thought, it's a new technology, let's go and learn it. And it's no different to any of the other sort of compute level programming environments that I've played with. That's my honest opinion of it. But again, like OpenGL and like DirectX, it just gives you access to the hardware. It doesn't necessarily do anything for you, which is nice in some regards, that you can start sort of breaking the established rules of how you put your graphics applications together. Will Vulkan power the next generation of 3D pixels voxels in the OLC engine? Probably not. The nice thing about the Pixel game engine, like a shameless plug time, is it will run on a toaster. Right? There is nothing that should be able to stop it from running. If it can support OpenGL 1, which almost everything does, then it should be able to run a Pixel game engine application. We've had Pixel Game Engine running on Raspberry Pi, Chromebooks, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation Portable, PlayStation Vita, various Linux, Macs, and of course Windows. So that comes down to the fact that it uses really old school technology to do the things that it needs to do, because it's just so widely supported. I should use the robot hand to hydrate me, shouldn't I? To make sure everything tries to stay in shot, which is also now the robot wants to start folding up all over the place. Tell you what, stick that over there. Right, these ones, why are they not sitting down properly? Let's get a bit of brute force going through, and again. There we go. Yeah, these two holes, or this this bend here, isn't quite true with where the servo should be expected to sit. So everything's just slightly off center. Going to end up sticking the robot arm in the T here. There we go. Stick that one on there. Also, I mean, everything about this kit is cheap, including these screws. God knows what they're coated in. That's on there. That one's on there. Put that round to here. Just tighten these up. There we go. Right, so I think that's another axis of freedom. And that one is going to control the rotation of the hand. Yet again, it gives me no instructions on how that works. I think we're just getting to the point where we're making it up as we go along now. Move those out of the way. So a little bit of a workbench tidy up so I don't get too confused about what's going on. So all of these bits of servo it came with, I'm not actually going to be using by the looks of it. Including that one, but we are getting to the point where we're looking at the gripping mechanism, which very thoughtfully they've sort of pre-assembled for you. Now, how is this going to work? Very, very cheaply by the looks of it. Okay, well that's fun. We'll come to that in a minute. But right now we want to stick a flange on. Ah, did I actually put one on? Yeah, I did put one on there. Onto this main servo up here. But again, we need to work out what the range is. Now, where's my little servo twiddler? There it is. So that's no good. That's better. So I think when we're mounting the hand, we want to go from that basically all the way around. So is that about halfway? Yeah. So if that's now sat at that side, I pull that to the middle and mount the flange 90 degrees-ish. We'll have to fine tune all of this in code later, because what we'll find out is all of these will be off by a little tiny bit. Right, where's my last screw with a flange on it? There it is. Where's my screwdriver? There it is.
You say PGE can run on anything, yet I need to use Misa to run my PGE golf game on my laptop. I think if that's who I think it is, I think isn't your laptop from like 1965 or something? I almost lost a hand to a robot at work not so long ago. Ah, Dragon Eye's here as well. Excellent. Archer and Krieger vibes.
I didn't rate the last series of Archer as highly as the others. Why is this not going in? Oh, that's just spinning around in there. What's going on? Doing nothing. Oh, hello. Yeah. See what's going on. I see some of the expensive plating off this flange has come off. I just need to press that in a bit more. It's a bit more manly. These have been sort of the weak point of this whole kit, I think. So that's supposed to just be screwed on to the end. Yeah, that's what it says. Feels a bit more positive. No, it doesn't. So that's not seating down properly. Oh, yes, it has. Can't have. No, there we go. Let me just try that screw in that thread and see what's going on there. Right, so it doesn't actually grab the thread until quite far down. So yeah, it just needs to be pressed on a bit more viciously.
So you see inside these things, I don't know if we can get it to focus. Come on, focus. I need a focus card or something in the background.
Well, it's meant to be a little sort of textured inside, so it gets a good grip on the outside of this servo shaft. Just not sitting down very well. Ready? Maybe that was enough. Let's see. Try again. No, you see, it doesn't. I can't push it down enough for the screw to start engaging with the thread. Oh, there we go. Just have to remember where this has gone now. So let's just screw this in. So again, that's just spinning around in there. Not convinced about that, because this is going to be the entire load-bearing structure for the robot hand. I'll turn that back round now. I'm going to turn that round. There we go.
What are we up to? Please can you make the time to make a real-time ray tracing tutorial? There is no tutorial on YouTube. Well, real-time ray tracing is a bit fiddly. How much did this kit cost? This was £32 English. There's a link that some of the mods have got, which they've been posting back and forth. Right, so we're now on to fastening the claw attachment onto the front. This literally just mounts onto this. That's what I'm saying. A little bit conscious that this is the weakest point of the entire robot so far, but it's also going to have to handle all of the load of everything it's picking up. I am absolutely going to bet, first time we try and pick something up, it's going to fall apart. Might have to adjust that one a bit more vigorously later on. But what we want to do now is mount a servo. With how many servos left? Yes, one servo left. Oh, phew. We didn't have enough servos then. Mount a servo to this. So, looking at the fantastic instructions, it suggests what we need to do is move that out the way, and we mount the servo onto it from behind, standing off on these pillars here. That's quite nice. Mount those on there. And then we fasten the flange to it through the front. Okay. Now these aren't the normal screws that we've been using for mounting servos to. It doesn't tell me which screws to use, so I'm just going to use the ones that seem to be the right size. I've got like an abundance of screws, so I'm less worried about it than I was. I wouldn't mind some washers though for these, but are these going to be too long? Oh, they seem okay. Am I making a humanoid? Did you see Mike Apton's data-oriented design video versus OOP? No, I didn't watch that video. Was it good? So, a quick survey of the people in the chat. What do you think about live streams on YouTube in general? I think I've watched a couple in the past, and I like the way Twitch does things, but
If I was to do more streams on YouTube, how do people feel about that? Maybe I should do streams on the second. You know, there's a Javidx9 extra channel, which sort of has all of my Twitch VODs and things uploaded onto it. Right, so it's saying somewhere I should have one more flanged screw, but I clearly do not. Because it was in the bag, it was full of little bearings. So we may have to make this up as we go along. So the arm bit needs to sit on here and open and close, which means I need something which can rotate from there to there. So in the closed position, it's almost horizontal. So as long as I've not got the centre of travel sort of too rested on one of the edges, let's see where it's up to. So I can't move that any more that way, which should probably be in the cloud. This thing's never going to pick up anything really. It's flapping about in the breeze. Might need to make some technical adjustments to how all that's put together. I mean, they don't even meet each other. May get the old 3D printer out and do some bits for that. So that needs to rotate round that way in order to open, which it can't currently do. So I want to set it probably to be at the other extreme from here. I might take a bit of a guess with this one. We'll see. Right, let's see what happens. So that's going to fit on there. Quite like to squeeze those together a bit more. I think I may have to use one of my existing screws, which we've got a lot of, but it's not the right type of screw. Hold that one down, and then now we take some of the 6mm screws. I might have to just have a couple of goes at this one in order to get it to feel right. Put one in. I need to put both in.
I prefer YouTube over Twitch. I prefer the interface on iOS. Usually go to Twitch for streams. People display on the site a bit more prominently. I tend to miss when people are live streaming. Well, I don't usually do it via YouTube. I know the bulk of my audience is from YouTube. I just find that the Twitch streaming experience a little bit more streamlined. This is a dreadful mechanism. This is rubbish. I have to tighten all this up. But it looks like we're not far off with where those need to be, but I think I need to tighten all of these things up. And ultimately, this is going to sit on here in that configuration, and that looks awful. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but they clearly just aren't going to fit very well. So I might have to play some tunes with what's going on there. But anyway, let's see if we can just tighten up some of this arm. It's flapping about in the breeze far too much. Again with my handy plier spanners here. Tighten a few of these things up. Don't want it too tight that it can't move, of course, but
You. These are really slack. I wonder why they've sold it like this. There we are. At least now things line up. Not quite flapping about as much as they were. I don't know if the servo is going to have enough grunt for that. So that's now a bit too tight in places. So let's see, where can we slacken off? Where does it look like it's a bit tight? That one looks like it's a bit tight. I just think it's the mechanical design has some inefficiencies with the levers in the middle. I think I'll just take a little bit out of those. One there and one there. Okay. Right, well, I guess we'll only find out then when we start to power it up. Let's have a quick look at some of the chat to see what's going on. He makes games usually written and optimised once, not maintained for decades, having to rewrite large parts of your software because businesses change their mind on something. Yeah, I guess when people start writing games, and there's a difference between us lot casually hacking something at home and writing something that's intended to pay your mortgage. You do want to think about things a bit differently. Perhaps the servo on top is not going out. This is Dragoneye. There is Dragoneye likes to hack things as well. It's not called Dragoneye. John Severin Flood. Could you recreate the Chrome No Internet Dino game in the terminal? Probably, yes. Roguelikes, yes. Roguelikes are one of the popular fashions as well, where everybody will suddenly start writing a roguelike. I think that feels awful. And it might be because I'm trying to backdrive the servo in a way that it just doesn't want to move. There's very little about that I like. Anyway, let's fasten it onto the front of the arm. This is going to be flapping about all over the place. And I should be engineered this one to sit that way round. So I now need a couple of longer screws and some nuts. Longer screws, nuts are everywhere. But this plate here, again, is so terribly bent. I don't think these holes line up with the flange in the slightest. And even if they did, there's a great whacking big screw in the way. So I'm wondering if instead of that flange screw, if I actually move to one of these with a smaller head, has it got more of a chance of sitting down? I don't think it does. I think that's just the way they've bent it. Let's have a look. And when it says we build the arm, I kind of want it that way, but do we want the servo on the top of the arm or do we want it hanging underneath? I guess, what's it going to clash with? It's going to clash with the thing it's picking up. So should we put it on the top like that? I think I'll put the arm that way up, even though that's not the way it says to do it in the instructions. Just so for me, it's out the way when we're trying to do things. We'll probably know better when we start to power things up how that should sit on there. But for the sake of completeness, Let's try fastening them together. Ah, you need a magic screwdriver for this one. That's good. So you need magic tools when you can't actually get your tool into the location where you need to screw the thing together. So this is awful. Right. Ugh. I'm sure Dragon9 could lend me some of his magic screwdrivers. Well, that ain't going in there very easily. Although the holes do line up, so it's a positive start. What I may end up having to do is put these screws through and actually mount those with nuts, which is not its recommended way. I think it's the only way I'm going to be able to get my tools into where I need them to be. That one's not too bad. Seems to be one side down, but the other side, the problem is, let's see if I can get this on camera. I can't get my screwdriver in line with the screw. So I'm kind of having to screw it at an angle, which of course isn't very efficient. So we get the cable out of the way. And I've got a feeling these are going to need to be quite tight. Well, let's persevere. I mean, it is turning occasionally. I wonder if I've got a more suitable screwdriver. I've got something that can help me out a bit. Is that just going to get in the way? Okay, that's one side, the awkward side at least. The motor is in the way. Well, the motor kit, the assembly came with these pillars on. I mean, I guess I could pop the pillars on, but in order to get the pillars off, I have to take all of the claw mechanism apart. I think we're good though. I think we're okay now. Right. So I think. Oh. So this is what we've got. We've got a base which can move like that, and we've got 3 linkages in an arm. I do this to the side. There we go. That's good. There you can see what's going on. So the base can move it like so. 3 linkages, and then another linkage to rotate the gripping claw. Probably didn't get that as centered as well as I could have done, but at least it gives you some manipulation. And finally, the claw itself, although that mechanism is awful, can grip. I just think it just doesn't like being back driven, that one, so it'll probably be alright once we start driving it from the motor end. So that's you know what, for £32, that's not terrible at all. Now, the intention is to write some code for it, which allows people on Twitch to, in Twitch chat, command what the robot can do. So you set a particular joint to a certain location. I'll simplify what the notation should all be for all of that. I thought it'd be quite fun that whilst I'm streaming games or speedruns or something, that the audience can have a second camera where they've got to try and solve some simple tasks like stack some blocks or something. It'll involve some community collaboration, which is going to end up being loads of fun. But you know what? £32. Let me put that there. I'm more impressed than I thought I was going to be. It's we'll have to see how it performs when we power it up. It's £55 if you buy all of the servos, yes. So the actual arm itself was £32, and then you buy a pack of servos for another £20. So I guess, yes, £55. It's not too bad. I can feel already that this servo here is really going to be taking quite a lot of the brunt of the moment, particularly at arm's length extension like that. But also a big design flaw. The cables are not going to be long enough, so I'm going to have to make some cables up to get them to a central point and do a nice tidy job on all the wiring. It makes a cool sound, doesn't it? Yes, exactly, robot. Pick up tea, splush, throws it in my face. I'll let that park there. Right, so I think that's the end of the build. However, if there are anybody that's not had any questions answered, I'll hang around for another 10 or 15 minutes or so if you've got any questions specifically about me or the project or anything else, a bit of a QA session. But I think I'm sorry if I've missed some of your questions in the chat. I noticed there's been quite a lot of chat going on. I'm really impressed with the number of viewers that turned up. That's quite unreal for me. And what I will say is, I never promote these things. I do have a Patreon account. It goes directly on stuff like this. I'm fairly fortunate. I have a full-time job. I'm okay. I'm not going to starve or anything. So any of the Patreon money that comes in gets directly put straight into crazy weird projects like this. We have a fantastic Discord server. It's really worth joining. The links probably in the description for this video, but also they're all over my YouTube page. Lots of fantastic, friendly, experienced programmers on there. I hope to say, like myself, prepared to help anybody out with lots of questions. Yes, there's a second channel. There's Javidx9 Extra, which has uploads of VODs from Twitch, where I typically do live streaming. Although on Twitch, I don't just live stream code and things. I also do some gaming and things. I'm a human being. I enjoy hobbies and stuff as well. But what I will say is, what microcontroller will you use? I will use an Mbed LPC 1768, which is they're not the cheapest controllers in the world, but they're very easy to use. I love them to bits. And so I think all I will leave to say is thank you to the mods for keeping an eye on the chat. Thank you very much. Yes, so keep the Discord going. And thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the building arm. There'll be a video exclusively about this project. The idea was to record the video and I'll speed it all up for the final video that I'll put on YouTube, where we'll talk about how we control it and how we interface to it, and maybe a couple of other little surprises I've not mentioned just yet. So it leaves me to say thank you all for watching and take care. Now I'm going to have to stumble about because I don't know how to disconnect the YouTube stream. Anyway, yes, I do play guitar. I'll see you next time, guys. Take care.